In the world of watches, the word icon is usually reserved for those legendary timepieces that have the most influential design cues or the most important mechanical innovations. Watches like the Rolex Submariner, the AP Royal Oak, or the Omega Speedmaster. But iconic doesn't always have to be associated with luxury. A Mazda Miata or a VW Beetle or a Ford Model T are just as iconic as, say, a Ferrari F40 or a Porsche 911, but just in a different way. Simple, practical, useful designs can stand the test of time just as well. In a similar sense, no watch better exemplifies the idea of a simple, purposeful design than the Casio F91W, a watch that, since its release in 1989, has defined what an affordable, durable, and accessible digital watch could be. To understand how the F91 achieved its legendary status and how it became the single best-selling watch of all time, we have to look back at Casio's roots and the technological landscape that helped to make it an icon. I'm guessing you already know this, but Casio didn't get its start as a watchmaker. Founded in post-war Japan in 1946 by Tadao Casio, the company originally manufactured mechanical parts and later shifted to electronic calculators. One important thing to note is that Casio stood out as a key innovator in miniaturizing components. That specific expertise in electronics, microprocessors, and digital displays would be critical when everything began to change in the watch industry in the late 1960s. Known as the Quartz Crisis, this era saw the traditional Swiss watchmakers entirely blindsided by the sudden arrival of inexpensive battery-powered quartz watches, led first by Seiko in 1969 and soon after by Citizen and also Casio. Interestingly enough, Casio got its start in watch development not with an affordable, practical tool watch, but rather a luxury item, the Casiotron. Priced at the equivalent of a decent month's salary, the Casiotron was an innovative addition to the world of digital timekeeping, displaying not only hours, minutes, and seconds, but also month, day, and date automatically adjusted for varying month length. This was actually a first for digital watches. With the Casiotron, a philosophy was born, this idea of ultimate practicality. Casio would forever pursue the goal of making watches better and more useful, and perhaps most important, though the Casiotron was incredibly expensive, the main goal would be to bring this philosophy to the masses. Throughout the late 70s and early 80s, Casio would stand out by developing watches that reflected their background in consumer electronics, not so much traditional watchmaking. Models like the F100 and CA50 calculator watch really showed the world their strength in integrating functions, things like stopwatch, alarm, world time displays, all placed into incredibly compact, lightweight devices. These weren't primarily watches for the boardroom. They were tools for students, workers, travelers, adventurers, and over time, for those with taste, they actually did find their way into the boardroom watches, like for example the AQ500 series. This was an era of gadgets, of highly specific, futuristic tools meant to make your life easier. If you needed a watch that could do something specific, Casio had probably already made it or was in the process of making it. A watch able to predict weather patterns? For sure. How about a watch with a full-blown calculator function? Definitely. Maybe you need a watch displaying the position of all 9 planets in our solar system for some reason. Why not? It was in this context of digital experimentation and, most importantly, shrinking component size that the groundwork was really laid for the eventual creation of the great F91W. Now, this watch was not some all-new thing for Casio. It was rather the culmination of everything that Casio had been doing up to this point, and an answer to the question, what would the ultimate affordable digital watch look like? What functions would it have? What would the design be? Now, there is no talking about the F91W without at least mentioning the F84W, released earlier in the 1980s. This watch played a crucial role in shaping what would eventually become the F91W. Though it never reached the same level of global fame, it really was the precursor, kind of the prototype, a Japan-only model that helped Casio perfect its formula for the ultimate global wristwatch. It had the same rectangular resin case, the same 3-button layout, and the same basic digital display structure that would define the F91W. From its segmented LCD screen to the water resist banner and the beeping function indicators, the F84W set the stage for what was to come. It even featured the now familiar green side-mounted LED microlight, albeit in a slightly slimmer and more stripped-down form. But more than just looks, the F84W helped Casio refine its production methods and its user interface. It proved that an ultra-light digital quartz watch could be manufactured at scale while still remaining intuitive and dependable. Now, the F84W lacked some of the battery efficiency and ruggedness of the F91W, but it really did carve a path for Casio to make this watch. In a sense, the F84W walked so that the F91W could run. Released in June of 1989, the F91W wasn't flashy, it wasn't really innovative or revolutionary in a technical sense, it was an evolution. The digital watch perfectly distilled. It took everything Casio had learned from over a decade of digital watch production and compressed it into a form that was absurdly affordable, but also rugged and practical. It would be like if Ford right now just set out to make a bulletproof, simple $10,000 truck, but sadly Ford is no Casio. The watch was designed by Ryosuke Moriai, more than likely the designer of the F84W, its predecessor. The watch's case was made of black resin and measured a compact 37.5mm by 33.5mm. It weighed just 21 grams, but without feeling cheap, primarily thanks to its satisfying button feel and its clear high-contrast LCD screen and durable resin material. Inside, the Module 593 quartz movement offered an accuracy of plus or minus 30 seconds per month with a 7-year battery life powered by the CR2016 cell. Now, 7 years was how it was advertised, but as you probably know, in practice, many lasted quite a bit longer than that. Its functions were basic but perfectly executed: a 24-hour chronograph, a daily alarm, a 12 or 24-hour toggle, and a calendar that required adjustment only for leap years. The signature micro light, a green LED positioned on the side, was famously dim, described by collectors as casting the glow of a tired firefly, but it did the job. The 3-button interface was intuitive with beeping feedback and even a cheeky Casio signature Easter egg when holding the mode button long enough. Everything about the F91W was geared towards clarity, efficiency, and practicality. But the real power came not from its spec sheet, but more its positioning and its accessibility. At under $20, and often less than that, it became the go-to watch for the masses. Many all-around tool watches had come before it, but none in such an affordable package. It was the first watch for school children. It was a reliable travel companion for backpackers, a backup timepiece for soldiers, technicians, adventurers. Unlike mechanical watches, it didn't ask to be pampered. You could swim with it, thanks to its true 30 meters or more of water resistance. You could drop it, you could forget about it in a drawer for a year, and it would just keep tracking the time perfectly. By the mid-90s, Casio was producing millions of F91Ws annually, with estimates suggesting over 3 million units sold per year and well over 100 million sold in total, making it probably the most popular and most sold wristwatch ever made. And remarkably, its design has remained almost entirely unchanged since its launch in 1989, and the module it uses is still in production today for basically the same price. The sheer ubiquity of the F91W really created a cultural icon. It was everywhere. It showed up in films, on the wrists of celebrities, on the wrists of political leaders, people like Barack Obama. It was in war zones, sometimes all at once. In many ways, the F91W wasn't the F91W or a Casio in the public's eye. It was just that digital watch. You know, a simple time-only Timex may have personified the watch as it was known before the F91W, but in many ways, the F91W took that place. The watch became so popular globally, its associations weren't always so nice, much like a Toyota Tacoma. But Casio couldn't help that their watch was so good that literally everyone owned one. What makes the watch's design so enduring is its brutal efficiency. There's no wasted space, there's no unnecessary flair. It's all about legibility, wearability, and ease of use. The proportions are small enough to fit on any wrist, and the ultra lightweight makes it so that it can be worn unnoticed. Because of this, inside Casio's own lineup, the influence of the F91W is almost impossible to overstate. Nearly every entry-level digital Casio released since 1989, from the W59, the A158, the more recent budget offerings, they all owe something to the F91W's formula. My daughter's own Casio LW204 is built on the same simple DNA of the F91W. Casio's core lineup of affordable digital watches owe so much to this watch. These watches reuse the same display layout, the same 3-button interface, and even the same fundamental resin case proportions. The F91W itself is so good that over 30 years after its release, it's remained unchanged for all these years because it can't really be made better without adding unnecessary functions and therefore price. Sometimes you just nail it the first time. Outside of Casio, the F91W became a template for companies in the budget digital watch space. Brands like Timex, Armatron, and Skmi have all released models that, if not outright clones, are clearly indebted to the F91W's design. But it's more than just the fact that so many watches pay homage to it. It's also the idea of the watch. The idea that a good practical watch doesn't have to be expensive. The F91W's popularity normalized digital watches in broader culture. In the 1970s and early 80s, digital watches were seen as kind of novel or even gimmicky. This watch helped solidify them as everyday tools capable of handling whatever its wearers could throw at them, whether in the schoolyards, factories, offices, it doesn't matter. It became a watch for everyone, regardless of status or budget. In many ways, it also helped spark a kind of counter-design movement. At a time when watches were growing bigger and flashier and more complex, the F91W stayed small, modest, and strangely timeless, though so thoroughly of its time. Its broad appeal among so many different types of people and even fashion circles proves that there is power in restraint. Good, simple, useful design often means knowing when to stop. I mean, it's almost like if Honda had just kept making the 4th generation Accord the same forever. That's what the F91W is, and that's why it's so popular. I think the most fascinating thing about the F91W is that it wasn't necessarily created to last this long. It wasn't built to be a status symbol or a design icon. It was meant to be cheap, practical, and disposable, a tool that you could replace for the price of lunch. And yet here it is, more than 30 years later, still ticking. Sort of. Sure, there are F91Ws lost in junk drawers and glove boxes all over the world, but there's also a lot of them on wrists. The F91W is a reminder that great design can come from the places we least expect it. Kind of like the best-selling vehicle of all time, the Honda Super Cub. It also was made to serve a kind of everyman purpose, and that design is still kicking and still relevant for all the same reasons. Manufacturers don't always have to pursue luxury or exclusivity. Sometimes the way to go is just getting the basics right and then never letting go of them. In an era where smartwatches are trying to do everything, track your sleep, measure your blood oxygen, count your calories, the F91W continues to do exactly one thing. It tells the time. Maybe it's telling you how long you've been running or sleeping. Maybe it's telling you the day or week or month. It's still just telling you the time and doing it so well. And despite never really going up in price, it still does this main job better, longer, and more reliably than almost anything else. Now, I love mechanical watches, and the idea that if there was some kind of apocalypse, I'd have this little machine that could still reliably tell time, no battery or internet required. But honestly, the F91W and a box of spare batteries, that might actually be the smarter choice when the world ends. Now, I don't own an F91W, but I do own this JDM F84W. I bought that one instead just to kind of be a hipster. Also, I actually do like the strap more and the slightly more retro design. But I do think I can speak on this watch in my experience, as it's essentially the same as the F91W. This watch has kept basically perfect time since I've had it. When I first ordered it, I was a bit worried about how it would look or whether or not it would make me just kind of look like a nerd or a dad or something. Like it would only look good with a pair of New Balance shoes. When I was waiting to get it, I did think that it would look cool, but to me it also looked kind of like a relic of the 80s and 90s. But then when I got it and put it on, it's just so small, it's so understated, the design is so simple, it looks great with everything. Jeans and a t-shirt, gym clothes, a suit and tie, it fits nicely under the cuff. Sorry, I love it when watch reviewers say that. Honestly, this is one of my most worn watches because I generally just wear casual clothes and few watches look better than this in that setting. The only complaint I have is the backlighting, which I think is basically the same for the F91W, but for the same price, if you care, you could get the 105W, which is essentially the same exact watch, just with Casio's proper electroluminescent backlight, which does make the watch that much more usable. But for sure, it's one of my favorite watches, and I can see why, at such a cheap price, this is one of the greatest watches of all time. Now, I would love to hear from you guys. Have you owned one of these great little watches? If you have, let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.